What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Front Row Cinema, a movie podcast for movie lovers by movie lovers. I am your host, TJ Trimboli, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Captain of Industry, Mr. James O'Reilly.
Howdy.
Oh yeah, and every week we go through another movie in my 1,000 movies I've seen in theaters, and we see how they've held up after all these years, in addition to looking at the hype surrounding the movie as well as its box office run. And we have a hell of a movie on deck tonight, Jim. What are we watching?
Titanic.
Oh yeah, some would say James A. Cameron's magnum opus.
Yeah, I'd say that. Like after watching it again, I think it's probably the best James Cameron movie. Yeah.
Yeah, well, like we were talking before we went on here, I really there's only like one or two other movies that could possibly even lay claim to such a feat, which would be Terminator 2 and Aliens.
Yeah, and I mean those are like probably the two closest to me. I think Avatar is probably a little bit more contentious in some circles, but it's obviously like a hugely popular, hugely innovative movie. This might just be that I watched Titanic yesterday, but it seems like it's like leagues better than all of those movies after watching it yesterday. It was like pretty impressive, honestly.
It's not just in your mind. I wholeheartedly agree. It is definitely leagues above everything else that he did. Titanic is a 1997 epic disaster film starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, written and directed by the maestro himself. It incorporates both historical and fictionalized aspects of the film and is based on the accounts of the sinking of the R.M.S. Titanic in 1912. Now, we always like to start with our memories of these movies from when they are released. Jim, was this your first time watching this movie, or do you have a memory this week of seeing Titanic for
I
the first time
this
back in the
isn't
day?
this isn't my first time watching it. I definitely did not see it like in theaters. I probably didn't see it until like a couple years after it had come out on like home video or something like that. I do have a memory. It was scandalous when it came out. It was
Oh,
like in elementary school, it was all the buzz because one kid got to go see it, and we were all like dying to know what it was about. And we had heard there was a sex scene, so we were all like very interested in that. Um, and then we all got in trouble, and that was the end of that. That's the memory I have of Titanic from when it came out.
quite a memory indeed. Just a bunch of young kids trying to get a peek at Kate Winslet's goodies. Was this
Yeah,
another one
and
you
like
think that your brothers weren't into, so you missed out on it because they weren't about it?
yeah, I mean, it definitely would have been considered lame, I think, in my house. Like, it wouldn't
True. If
have
they,
been,
if
like, super cool to be
yeah,
into
if they
this, like,
weren't
because it is,
in
like, a love story at the end of the day.
Yeah, it is a very romantic movie. So yeah, I guess if they weren't hitting on dinosaurs from the Lost World, they certainly aren't going
Right,
for the
right. I
romantic
think we're
doomed love story.
we're starting to get a picture of, like, my older brothers, and just, like, they were way too cool for school. They were missing a lot of classic movies.
All right, they were just like 90s movies, these biggest movies of all time. Uh-uh, not for us. I can't wait till we finally get to one where they did go and see it and brought you along so that we can start to really get an idea of what were the movies that were driving for them, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if we're gonna hit them. They were both pretty big into John Woo. It's like,
Oh
which is
man,
a,
yeah, and
which
John,
is
I
like a
didn't,
very specific type of action movie.
yeah, and I unfortunately did not get to enjoy the John Woo Fest until much later, in my movie going experiences.
But what about you? What's your memory of this? Did you see it in theaters? Oh, I guess you
It
did, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about it.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about. I did see this in theaters. This was a movie that my mom actually took me to, and I don't know. I say took me to, but it could just be that she had no one to watch me, and she really needed to go see this movie, as all women did in 1997. And I just
Right.
got dragged along to it. But whether she brought me to it or dragged me to it, I thank her for it because this movie is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's one of those memories that I have in my head of being a young kid seeing a movie in theaters for the first time, and like when people give their reasons for like why they love going to the movies, that's one of those ones that I always think of because I can still remember, like being on the edge of that ratty cardboard seat, just like enamored with everything that was happening on screen. And even though at 8 years old I didn't understand nearly, two-thirds of what was really going on in the movie, I just knew that I was like, this is awesome and I can't get enough of this. And this was a movie that I've returned to so many times in my life. Actually, they just re-released it back in February. for its whatever anniversary, or they were doing something with it, and they re-released it in 3D, and me and Heather went and saw it again. So this is a movie that I've returned to theaters to see over and over again. Is just how freaking like much this movie spoke to me from a young kid seeing it in theaters for the first time.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I think if I had saw this when I was like 8 or 9 years old, I think it would have blew my mind too. It's like it's everything about it is just so larger than life, you know.
Yeah,
From like
it's
the luxury of the boat and like everything that's going on there with just how grandiose everything looks and the size of the boat to yeah, just like the effects of them like sailing and everything. It's a really impressive visual movie.
yeah, and it's crazy that you don't really see epics like that anymore. Like you never see them now. But like that was like even in the 90s, you didn't really get epics like that anymore. That was like truly like the last like old school type of like almost cinemascope epic that they used to put in theaters all the time in like the 50s and 60s.
Also a period movie, which you don't really see them do much anymore these days.
Yeah, you
They're
really
like
don't see too many of those.
kind of prohibitively expensive, so
Yeah,
um, and
prohibitively expensive.
it's a pretty great like mix of a period movie, and it captures kind of like that high society of the 20s, like in this really amazing way. And then also it's like a disaster movie, which like it's probably the best disaster movie ever made. So like those two things combined make it like such a unique experience to me. I don't know.
It is crazy because like normally when you think of like disaster movies, like immediately you think of like just schlocky B movie fun because that's what like most disaster movies are. Like you
Yeah,
think
you
like
think of
Dante's Peak,
Geostorm.
Armageddon, yeah, Geostorm. Like you
Right?
you
Like
th- you think of B movie Gerard Butler classics. Like
exactly, yeah.
you don't think like this huge, grandiose, epic, romantic story that just is so sweeping in how grandiose it is. It's just not what you would think with a
Yeah, and I mean
disaster
like
movie.
if you we just brought up Dante's Peak and Geostorm, and it's like isn't Titanic like the missing link between those two things? You know what I mean? Like Dante's Peak is so much different than Geostorm, and like I mean obviously comparing Geostorm to Titanic is ridiculous, but 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 just like the way that the CGI, like the way CGI has taken disaster movies to those places, I feel like Titanic is the first thing I can point at and be like, oh, there it is, you know?
Like it's really like helped push along that genre of film, which is hilarious because you've got this A+ movie that really kicked off being able to do the technological things that you would want to see in these B movies. Like I'd say what Titanic, and then also I think Twister came out the same year, right? Or was that a year before?
I
I think
think
it
it
was
was that same summer. I feel like we talked about
no,
Twister
no,
last time
it was
too.
96 because Lost World broke Twister's record. So I think
Right,
Twister
that's what
came
it
out the
was.
year before. But still, yeah, you look at those two movies and like the way in which they broke ground in like the visual aspect of creating these larger than life disaster set pieces. Like they just really paved the way for the ones that you see today, like an Everest or
Yeah, Everest
so
is a
many of them.
good one. Is a
Yeah,
good
like Everest is a
comparison with
perfect
that.
example of like that visual technological marvel to tell these stories.
Yeah, and I like. There's also I thought it was like maybe one of the coolest parts of the movie for me. Because it is this big kind of larger than life disaster movie, but at the same time it's so self-contained. You know what I mean? Like this isn't like 2012 where the world is ending. You know, it's just you're on a boat in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and the world is ending, but just the world for this boat. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is pretty great. I thought.
Yeah, they managed to keep it like self-contained, but have these huge stakes for the people that at least are on this boat that aren't taking this thing seriously because it is the avarice of man thinking that like they couldn't possibly be in any type of danger. Jim, run me down. Let's hear the stats. Let's see just how Titanic this box office performance was.
I see what you did there. That was
Oh
pretty good.
yeah.
So yeah, at the time, most expensive movie ever made, two
Yeah.
hundred million dollar budget.
That does not surprise me at all. That is a running theme in James Cameron's career.
Yes.
I don't like that dude has got to be so fucking calm under pressure. I couldn't imagine somebody giving me $200 million and making that movie. Like I would succumb under that pressure so
Yeah,
quick.
I'm
And to
like,
do it time and time again.
yeah, I'm not really sure which part is harder, like actually making the movie or convincing someone to give you $200 million to make a movie. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Well, I'm sure for him after Titanic, it was easy. I love the story where he just walks in to do Avatar and he's like, the building you're standing in is thanks to me. Give me my check. And they just gave it to him. And it's just
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
yeah, that's pretty baller.
that's that is a pretty great trump card that you can pull. Okay, so $200 million budget. The movie came out right around Christmas '97, December 19th, 1997. Opening weekend. What's your guess? Throw a number at me.
Well, I know that James Cameron movies don't normally open up high. He is very much a long distance runner, doesn't explode off at the finish line. So I would go somewhere probably around 30 to $40 million.
28 million opening weekend.
For
It's like a
97,
pretty
that's not terrible,
no, and I mean it did open number one for
especially for a
that weekend.
movie like that, that probably was a weird sell at the time because it's not normally like a big, like, yeah, there's a lot of action in it, but you're not selling it as an action movie. You're selling it as this grand Dios romantic doomed romantic story. So 28 million sounds about right for like what you're pulling in opening weekend.
Yeah, and I mean also like I was a little young, but I wonder like if I mean this is kind of a thing that I think happens with a lot of holiday movies where like Christmas holiday movies, they don't necessarily open as strong, but they play through that kind of dead area in January and February, where not a lot's coming out. So if one catches on, it like kind of like The Greatest Showman did, where like it
Yeah,
opened really poorly, but then like throughout January and February, it was like the only thing in theaters that was worth seeing. So like it
just
just
kept
really
making
cleaned up.
money. You see
Um,
that with a bunch of movies. And honestly, 28 million also makes sense, especially when you consider that production wise, like everyone had written this movie off from the get-go. Like once they moved from the summer to December to work on the special effects more, critics just immediately used that to label that this movie was going to be a disaster.
yeah, I mean that is kind of a red flag, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, being like, hey, we're gonna need another 6 months to work on these bad boys. He was like,
but so okay, so we have like a pretty modest opening weekend,
okay,
and then it did something that I don't think you see a lot, at least anymore, where its second weekend it made more money. It went up to 35 million,
gotcha. All right. Well, yeah,
and
because
then from
that would make
there,
sense because the next weekend is around Christmas weekend and New Year's, so everyone's off
yeah,
now.
that actually does make a lot of sense, right? Because if it
Yeah,
came out on the 19th and like the 26th is the following week, yeah, that's
yeah. So
so you're right
everyone,
in that Christmas New Year's range, yeah.
what a Christmas movie.
Um,
Like, yeah, let's go see the doomed Titanic movie.
so it makes 35. It then goes on to become the fastest movie to 300 million domestic in 44 days.
That's impressive.
And from there it goes on to be the highest grossing movie of all time, right? Like pretty famously holds that record for decades.
Yeah, it's a record that he breaks himself
Right. It's
with
not broken
Avatar.
until Avatar, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he breaks it himself with Avatar, which is so insane. Like he's just like, I'm gonna break my own fucking record. Only him and Spielberg have ever done that. They're the only two. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
well, I mean, it's yeah. I mean, Titanic was the one for like 20 years, so nobody was breaking anything. It stayed at number one for 15 weeks.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Finally, take a swing at what movie do you think finally dethroned it from the number one spot?
Like, all right, so it's playing into 98, which
The
means if
late
it's in there,
90s. I'll give you a hint because this is pretty tough. It's
I
a
was gonna
late
say like
90s sci-fi classic.
sci-fi class. Well,
I,
you
I
saying
may be
sci-fi
saying that a
classic
little bit
makes
tongue in
me,
cheek.
yeah, you saying sci-fi classic makes me think that it is not, in fact, a sci-fi classic.
Well, it depends on who you ask. I would call it a sci-fi classic.
Oh my God. We're in 1998. It's probably like right around April if it's in for like 15 weeks. I have no idea. I couldn't even tell you what the fuck came out in April of '98, let alone like '98 in general. What
All right,
broke it?
yeah. This is a hard one. Yeah. Lost in Space.
Oh my God. That's the like Matt
Yeah.
LeBlanc, like Gary Oldman, like one, right? There's like Heather
Yeah,
Graham
yeah.
in it too, whatever. Oh,
Matt LeBlanc is in it. Yes. William Hurt plays the dad,
the dad, right?
John
Yeah.
Robinson. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I
What a
forget.
movie. Yeah,
Let me
Gary
look
Oldman's
up
like
who
the
plays.
guy that they pick up, right? And he just like starts sabotaging the ship.
Yeah, Gary Oldman's like the Doctor, Doctor Smith, who's like the famous Lost in Space enemy.
Oh my God.
Oh man, there's dude. I should have looked this up a little bit earlier. There's some deep cuts in here. So
All right, let's
the
hear it.
daughter in Lost in Space, Lacey Chabert,
Wow.
right? Who goes on to play
That's
Mean
an early
Girls.
cut for her.
Yeah, yeah, like totally. I did not remember that at all. But that's a pretty interesting one. But yeah, Lost in Space, great movie. Like peak 1990s action sci-fi, in my opinion.
Great movie. Get out of here with your great movie.
Totally worthy of dethroning Titanic.
It's so funny
Um,
that that's the movie like you could tell at that point, like Titanic literally was probably running on fumes at that point. Like it had made everything it
right,
possibly could.
right.
And Lost in Space just comes in fresh out of the gate, like I'm taking this one, baby.
Yeah, let's see. You know what would be interesting? What was Lost in Space's number to dethrone it?
Oh yeah, like yeah, how much did it make in its opening weekend that it broke? Like watch it like one with like it made like $11 million.
It opened to 20 million and some change.
Which is
So, like,
honestly, that's
still,
not terrible for that.
no, yeah, that's
20
not
million?
terrible.
Yeah, it's not a terrible opening for them for that movie.
I mean, it wasn't like it got like 6 million and Titanic was just really out of steam, you know. Uh,
Well, what did Titanic make that weekend?
okay, hold on. This is getting in depth. I got to go to the Google machine.
Gotta go to the Google machine. All right, well you rock to the Google machine.
Oh, I mean, we can talk in Google. That's fine.
You can talk and Google. He can talk and Google. But yeah, by the time this movie finally left theaters, it was the highest grossing movie of all time. Domestic gross of 600 million, internationally made 1.2 billion for a worldwide gross of 1.8 billion, which was absolutely unheard of. Because not only had a movie not passed a billion yet at that point, like it flew past a billion. It made almost two.
Yeah, yeah, it's insane. I mean, it's still in the top five, right? With all the however many crazy movies have come out that have broken $1 billion and more.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
thanks to re-releases of this movie now in 2012, 2017, and then this past year, it now sits at $2.2 billion. So it's definitely still up there along with those other 2 billion movies, which is what I think like Force Awakens, the two Avatar movies, and then I think Infinity War and Endgame.
yeah, that sounds
Which is
about
another
right.
crazy thing to think about that there's been six movies that have grossed $2 billion, and three of them are James Cameron. He's got half the playing field.
Right, yeah. I mean, right. He's like in terms of commercial success, he's one of the
He's insane.
best.
He's absolutely
All right.
insane.
I'm having a lot of trouble finding this number for
All right, never
Titanic.
mind, never mind. It's all right. You gotta go too deep in the box office mojo.
Yeah, hold on. Let me try one more thing.
This is something we should have would have
Yeah.
pre
This is
scanned on.
right. Well, yeah, we're like diving into to like too much detail probably.
Yeah, now we're getting too nitty gritty into the
Okay.
box office stats. Now we're like,
If
show
we
me
want
number
to
two for the 15th week of Titanic.
right, right.
Too
Which
deep,
I
too
think
deep.
if we wanted to do it wouldn't be the end of the world, but we probably shouldn't try and do it on the fly.
Yeah, right in the moment. It's not one you really want to prep for. But going off, continuing in here with these box office stats and into its sort of, critical acclaim, this movie, one of the things I was looking at that I did not realize that I guess it makes obviously sense, but I don't know why it's just something I never thought of, was that Titanic won Best Foreign Film in Japan.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see.
And I was looking at that and I was like, oh, that's weird. But then I was like, why is that weird? We have a best foreign film. So why wouldn't it would stand to reason that other countries would also have best foreign film?
Yeah, and that like American movies would often win,
and that
right?
American
Like,
movie, yeah, and that American movies would get in there. But there was just something so odd to me when I was going into that, being like, oh, Titanic won Best Foreign Film in Japan. Interesting. That's something. Like,
that is wild.
and now I
What are
want to
the
like,
awards called in Japan?
yeah, now I want to like deep dive into like YouTube and see if like did James Cameron go to the awards ceremony? Like, what was that like? Like, who showed up to accept that award?
Just, I feel like we're at a point where we're just gonna edit out like the last 20 minutes, and like there's like all this stuff that we could have prepared that we just didn't prepare. like it'd be awesome if we had like a clip of James Cameron accepting the Best Foreign Film Award or something.
Like,
Not
just
quite as
ready to
awesome for us
go.
to just wonder if it exists.
Like, he just showed up and learned how to say "I'm king of the world" in Japanese, and showed up and did that.
Yeah, right. That's like the tail end of his speech.
That would be a bold move. But turning back to our award ceremonies, this movie won all of the awards. This movie not only tied for the most ever nominations at 14, but it won 11, tying Ben-Hur for the most wins at that point. And then a few years later, Return of the King would join the party as well. But that's crazy. 11 is it basically won everything but its actor noms and makeup,
Yeah.
which
Right. I
is,
mean, like that's like a sweep, right? Like
yeah,
11
as
is
an
like
absolute
about as
sweep.
many as anybody wins.
Yeah, but that's got to be like one of the biggest movies, or the biggest awards heavy movie to not win any actor noms.
Yeah, I mean, I guess who do you think should win? Like Leo, I suppose.
No, I wouldn't have given it to any. Like, they're all everyone. I don't think anyone gives a bad performance, but I don't really think the performances in it are anything that's like award winning worth. Like, they're all really good and they really help sell everything, but their
Yeah,
performances
there
aren't
was
really like they really did a great job selling the romance and getting swept up in all of it. But I never felt that I was like, yeah, Leo should win Best Actor for this.
there was one part of his performance in particular that stood out to me.
Uh,
When they're going when he gets invited to the dinner, right? And he like goes and gets fitted for his tux, and he's like, and then the door opens and he just like walks in looking all handsome and sharp. um he does, like, I thought he was amazing in that scene, like, one, because he's just like strikingly handsome, right? Like he like it's like this really you see him in a very different light for the first time, like instead of looking like some downtrodden, like poor, steerage, is that what they called it, steerage kind of guy.
yeah.
He comes in looking sharp, and you're like, oh wow, like there's really no difference between him and these people. It's like that, like he plays that really well, and then as he's going through the scene, he like, you can tell he like feels uncomfortable, you know what I mean? Like, and like just like the way he's like trying to copy people's mannerisms, and the way he looks overwhelmed, and he's doing all this without saying a word, right? Like it's like, so I thought that scene in particular was like pretty impressive for his acting performance, and that was the one where I was like, huh, like wow, okay, I totally get the Leo hype.
Yeah, no, yeah, he was roguishly good looking in those movies. In this one in particular, from that era of his young filmography. But yeah, that is exactly, to your point. He does so much without saying anything. Like, you see him there
Yeah,
like practicing like shaking someone's hand to himself, and like
yeah,
how
and
he would like respond to words.
there's like one part where he's like almost like trying to make himself look small and like hide behind like a little like like beam that's there. Like you
Yeah.
can tell he feels like so out of place, and it's just, I think it's amazing the way he did that with again, without any lines. He's just like facial expressions and reading a room, and like I thought it was like pretty incredible, honestly.
No, he definitely more than holds his own in the movie. And I remember it was funny. I was reading behind the scenes stuff about it, and Jim Cameron talking about it. And when Leo was like first being considered for the role and had him read for it, he would like DiCaprio was like turned off by it because he was like, "Oh, like I gotta read. You're not just gonna offer me the part." And James Cameron, being James Cameron, was like, "Yeah, no, dude. Like everyone reads for me. I don't care who you are." And so DiCaprio like reads for him and everything and gives a great performance. But DiCaprio, like, to him, he always wanted to bring like a tick or something to it, something to like give a more visual flair for the actor. Like I think there
Okay.
was something Cameron was talking about. He was saying like maybe I bring like a limp or something as like an example or whatever. And Cameron knowing that like he basically needed DiCaprio to be the straight man, like which is a tough thing to do. But like DiCaprio didn't think that it really took a lot of effort on his part, so he wasn't as enamored with it as he could be. And so Cameron just sits there and he just goes, he's like, "What I need you to do," he's like, "I basically just need you to be. I need you to be sure of who you are and be in the moment as like presence. Be basically be this straight man who knows who he is." And he goes, "Maybe as an actor, you're not ready for that yet." He's like, "What I'm asking for you is
Oh,
a little bit harder than I think you're ready for." And the second
yeah,
like
yeah.
Cameron said that, DiCaprio was like, "Oh no, 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 no. I get what you're saying. I think I can bring to this what you're
Right,
like."
yeah.
And it's just
He
like
turned it into a challenge rather than like
exactly,
something
yeah. And
that's
it's
boring.
just like
Yeah.
those type of things that show like how incredible of a director like James Cameron is, that like he knows how to put out those little fires or to like deal with his actors that are trying to do something that he knows the movie doesn't need.
Right,
But
yeah. I mean, right. It's how do you like massage egos and manipulate those kind of relationships to get the most out of them for the movie, right? So yeah,
yeah,
that's I think that's really what directing these big budget movies is all about, and that's probably why somebody like Cameron is the best at it.
he's just phenomenal. Yeah, but everybody in it really brings their A game into the movie. One of the funnier things that I was looking into, or my last bit of trivia I have before we can really deep dive into this movie, is going off again of talking along these lines of how Cameron is and how like meticulous and particular he is about his performances and getting the most out of his workers. He can come off as a bit of like a drill sergeant, and that can turn off a lot of people. And apparently, it turned off one person in particular on this set. They've never found out who he was, but this man was so turned off by James Cameron's tyrant behavior on set that on one of the days of filming, he put PCP in the food.
What?
Yeah, and
What do you
everybody ate it.
mean?
He put
Like,
PCP in like I think they were serving like chili or something, and he put PCP in it, and everybody ate it. Bill Paxton like talks in an interview where he's like, "Yeah, dude, all of a sudden everyone just starts tripping balls and freaking the fuck out." He goes, "James Cameron realized what was happening right after he ate it, and before it really took hold, he just made himself vomit everywhere so that it
oh
didn't take
come
effect." It
on.
was like, dude, like this man is
That's
so militant, like.
that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Like he realized what was happening and immunized himself by
Yeah.
throwing up.
Like he was like, he's like, I ate it 10 minutes
Somebody
ago. I have about 30
somebody's got to
point.
steer the ship.
Yeah. He's like, I've got about 50.9 seconds before it reaches my central nervous system. Like,
Yeah, that's so ridiculous. Yeah, what the hell? What's even the point of that? Like, I guess you just like shut down the studio. Like,
yeah,
really, you
I
just
don't know.
want a
But
day
also,
off? I
like,
don't know.
what did everyone else do to you, man? Like, you took down so many more people than just Jim Cameron. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's hard to get into their motivation, and who can say if it was really because James Cameron's a dick or if they just wanted to get everybody high on PCP.
yeah, right. Yeah. If you've got
That's
enough
that's a
PCP
crazy
to throw
story though.
into a bunch of chili, like, you're probably not thinking too clearly these days.
Yeah, I mean, like, right, if you just have enough PCP to to dose everyone in the cast and crew of Titanic, I don't know. There's like definitely something a little weird already going on there.
Just absolutely, absolutely insane. What a start. Imagine like that had to be so crazy just to work on that movie. And you're just like, yeah, it was a good time. One of the days we all got high on PCP.
Yeah, or like, dude, just imagine like you start to get high and you're already thinking, what the fuck is going on? And then everyone around you also starts to trip balls. That'd be nuts. Like, and just like nobody knows what's happening, you know?
Yeah. And you're on this huge set that's just this big like tank of water. Like a horrible place to be while you're just like, all right, everyone back in the pool. Like, bro, I'm not getting in there.
Yeah, and I mean, like, if it was at lunch, like, did they start filming again before, like, before they, like, you know what I'm saying? Before it really
You see,
happened?
you got to listen to the commentary, and Leo's like, "Yeah, if you look really hard in this scene, you can see my eyelids or my
Right,
pupils are really dilated. Like I'm tripping
right.
balls here."
That's the part I want to know. did anything get filmed while they were all tripping, and did any of that make it into the movie?
Like Cameron pukes and he's like totally fine. He's like, I can use this.
Yeah, exactly. The plot twist is Cameron is the one who dosed everybody, so he could get the most out of them for like the ship sinking scenes.
He wasn't getting the shots he needed, the emotion that he
Yeah,
needed. So he
he's
just
right. He's like, this doesn't feel real enough. Everybody needs to be freaking the fuck out.
he's like, I need everyone frenzied, so I'm gonna get them on PCP. They're gonna go nuts. But as always, before we like to dive into our movie, we like to ask the critic. And our most prominent critic from us when we were young kids was the man Roger Ebert. So we got to take a look and we got to see what did Roger Ebert say about Titanic. Jim, do you got it up there? What is it? What did Roger Ebert have to say about Titanic? How many stars did this man give this movie?
He gave it 4. Let me bring up the review really quick.
That's a four's four's not bad.
Isn't that like the most you can give it?
I don't know. Did Roger Ebert go up to 5 or did he just do it out of 4?
I think Roger Ebert was a traditional 4-star kind of guy.
He was a 4-star kind of guy.
I think so, yeah.
Well, then I guess, yeah, then I guess that's so then I guess he gave it the perfect. He gave it the perfect bunch. I saw in the review he lavishes, of course, all praise on this movie like everyone does. But one of the funny things that I saw in it that he does was he kind of laments on the fact that the movie is very trope filled and kind of uses that. Like the only time that I could see him level some criticism against it is he talks about how just like by the numbers the movie is. And that was like such a weird thing that stuck out to me because it was just like, is that such a bad thing, Ebert? Like,
Yeah, and I
well,
mean, he's probably just nitpicking because he did give it 4 stars. So he obviously loved the movie. And like you said, he does ring a lot of praise in it on it in this review.
I guess my
But yeah, I
question
mean,
is
I'm
like, did you
I'm
even
kind of
really
with
need
you.
to nitpick?
No, I don't think you did need to. But yeah, I mean, like, I guess it is a little bit like paint by numbers, but not really. It's like executed so well that I don't think that that's what I'm thinking at all while I'm watching it, you know?
And like, even though like a lot of the times Cameron's movies can be very paint by numbers, it's very much in design because he's able to build these storylines that are very universal and world reaching. Like, and I think that's a big reason why his movies are so commercially successful as well as critically successful is because he knows how to write these stories in a way that will be accessible to anybody in the world, no matter what, you know, language you speak.
Yeah, and I mean, like, right, like the story of Titanic really, it's about like, a high society woman who learns through love that there's more to life than money and like fancy clothes and shit like that. And it's like that's not really like like that's not really breaking any new boundaries, right? Like
Yeah.
you're not really breaking any new ground there. But like I said, the way he executes that story and like puts it on display, like yeah, like it's a classic for a reason. So I don't know. I guess like you could call it a trope or you could call it just like good storytelling, and I think it's probably the latter.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Ebert, you bastard.
Yeah. Still gave it 4 stars though.
Still
So
gave it four
like,
stars. So sorry, we'll give him a
yeah,
we'll give him a pass on this one. There was no
I'm
Spawn
sure he
like
thought it was great too. Yeah, right.
it was.
A whole half star more than Spawn.
Yeah, which is absolutely insane to me that like Spawn only
Yeah,
got a half a star less than
right, right.
Titanic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he might not think that they're that close.
But according
But
to the star rating, it
the
is.
proof is in the pudding. Yeah,
Yeah,
4 stars versus 3.5 stars. It's hard to argue.
it's bold moves, Ebert, bold moves. But all right, let's dive now into the actual movie, what we liked, what doesn't work, all of that good stuff. What worked for you in this movie, Jim?
Yeah, I mean, like we got into it a little bit. Like visually, it's awesome throughout. Like there's so many incredible shots and so many like the sets are all amazing looking and like they're kind of jaw dropping. Even when nothing's happening, I'm just kind of like blown away by what's on screen. You know what I mean? So I mean, yeah, all of that was spectacular. The CGI works a lot, and then other times it's like very noticeable. Like that it's that basically anytime like a person is being computer generated, it's very like obvious. And sometimes with the boats, but even with that, I think the effects were like incredible, especially given the time period that they existed in. um and just the story, man, the story, like story is king, and I think this is like the big thing you can, the big one of the bigger movies you can point to say like, yeah, this is driven by just an incredible people-centered story. And that's really the only thing that makes this movie about a boat sinking work, right, is like that there's people that we care about. So
Yeah, yeah, he really found like the perfect way to tap into a storytelling element that would really sell the sinking of the ship in a way that you wouldn't get with a lesser experienced director behind the scenes.
yeah,
Just like the way that he frames it too, where it's not just following this story of a girl on this ship who is learning that money isn't everything, status isn't everything, that you can be just as happy being the poorest person on that ship
yeah, and
as
probably
the
be
richest.
happier, by
Yeah,
the way.
as the richest person, but he also frames it and uses a flashback device to really help sell that, because it's not just so much that she learns it, but it's that she's teaching other people it too, that she's taken what Jack has taught her and she lived by it. She passes it along to Bill Paxton's
Right, right.
character, who is just this greedy, in it for himself, wants to be famous plunderer. And through listening to her story about the Titanic, he learns more than just I'm just here for money, that there's more to it than that, that these were real people, that this was an experience, that he learns empathy through this and goes on and passes what Jack has passed to her, and now she has passed on to him. So it's
Yeah,
incredible the framing devices that he uses to punctuate these storytelling elements.
yeah, right. And I mean, right, like the way Paxton basically learns the same lesson that she learns, right? Like that the material things that I'm after, like this necklace or like, whatever's inside these rich people's safes, like all of that stuff, is kind of flashy and seems cool, but it pales in comparison to the story that she tells them. And you can tell, like, they're all kind of like 90s, shoot from the hip, like rock and roll kind of like plunderers in the beginning. And by
His
the
best
end,
friend
they're
one is hilarious.
right, right. So they're kind of a trope early in the movie, but by the end, they're all literally not. They don't care about any of that shit. They're all hanging on every word that this lady says.
Like you could
Um,
tell they're all just changed at that point. Cause like in the beginning, that guy that we talk about, his like buddy, the bearded dude, like he's in the beginning, he's like, where she worked in Hollywood as an actress. Like they don't believe
yes,
it. Like they're like, she's in it to
right,
con us. And then by the end, they don't even need proof that Jack existed. They're just like floored by this story.
right, right. I mean, it's so good you couldn't make it up, and I guess Cameron kind of did make it up, so there's
Yeah.
that. But in the movie, in the world of the movie, that's like how they're feeling about it.
Yeah. When
So
he like throws
yeah,
his
and I
cigar
mean,
into the ocean.
yeah, and the way that flashback, the way they build up to jumping into the flashback, it's just so well done, dude. Like by the time I'm in the past, I already care so much about that lady. Just from the
Yeah.
first 15 minutes of that movie, I am dying to know what happened to her.
Yeah.
And so it's just like masterful movie making. There's just no other way to put it. It's like a masterpiece of a movie.
It's one of those movies that watching it and every second you're every frame of the film you're like, this is a master at work. Like there's not a scene that doesn't work, there's not a scene that's fluff. Like everything builds on itself as it propels itself to this conclusion. Like it has this grandiose opening as we go into this flashback, and we've got this huge section of just like the fun and games of this world, where we're seeing these two meet and we're seeing the two of them fall in love, and it's beautiful and it's grand. But the whole time we have that pit in our stomach because we know what's coming. Like we know where this is all leading to, and it's just like beautiful but horrific to watch. And he builds it perfectly, because the whole time in your head you're like, yeah, we know it's going to sink, we know it's going to be doomed, but you don't realize like how horrific that sinking truly is until it starts happening and you're watching all of it
Right.
go down and you
We're
see it unfold.
right. We're the Bill Paxton like of this. Like we're looking at it as like a trinket that we learned about.
Yeah, it's amazing
Whereas
how
it
he
was,
frames that like we are like the audience is Bill Paxton's character in this movie.
yeah,
Like
I mean,
we're
right. This
all
isn't
learning together.
that we've always heard about as like a story, but and like you think about like the real broad strokes of it, but you what's lost over time is the like real human experience that happens and how horrific the actual moment is. And yeah, this movie definitely captures that.
Yeah, no, he captures it beautifully. That whole last, I want to say like hour, like
I
from the
clocked
second,
it. They it's about an hour and a half in when like about halfway when he gets like pinched for stealing the necklace, the guy like plants the necklace on him,
yeah,
and it's about 2 hours in when they hit the iceberg.
they hit the iceberg. Yeah,
So
that
there's like it's a long sequence of that boat sinking. It's like about a third of the movie.
yeah, and it's gut wrenching. It's insane how brutal he can make it without it being like a blood filled spectacle.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
like it's more violent than some of the like crazier like John Wick scenes that I've seen where it's just like they're getting like video gamed murked and you're just seeing blood everywhere. Like this in Titanic feel it does so much more with so little. Like the scenes where like they're jumping off the side of the ship and you see like a dude just take a header into one of the propellers and then he's just like flinging in circles into the water. You're just like, dude, like
Well,
that
and
is
that's I mean
absolutely horrific.
that's when you're getting to like the climax of it too. Like the thing that I think is like the most impressive about this whole movie is that, you know, the first like 45 minutes is like a very traditional disaster kind of movie where like or sorry, the first 45 minutes of them sinking is like a traditional disaster kind of movie where nobody's even dying. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody's
Yeah.
actually dying. It's just this like impending sense of doom that everyone is at different paces realizing that is there, you know? And like constantly like water is just rising like throughout like 45 minutes of the movie until you get to like when she breaks Jack out and then like a whole hallway is like full of water. You know, it's like there's nothing like really terrible happening to any individual other like nobody's like taking headers into propellers yet, but there is like everybody's constantly running from this thing that they will not escape. You know what I mean? It's like and it's like it's amazing in that sense.
Yeah, and it's even crazier because you watch like in those first 45 minutes of the sinking how like no one is even taking it seriously still yet. Like most
Right.
people are
Yeah.
just, oh, like is there going to be tea on top? Like will they be serving tea? Like it's
Right.
like there it's just so spectacularly well done how even just in that section of the sinking he has that beginning middle and end there and he builds it so perfectly from we hit the iceberg to shit really starts to hit the fan to it's fully sunk and everybody is drowning and freezing to death.
Right.
it's
And
it's just
there's
insane.
in the middle there's that whole like and this is what I would call the middle of that is like that whole like 30-minute sequence of them just like getting to lifeboats and then deciding not to get on like everybody's doing it
Yeah,
like Rose refuses at first, then Billy Zane has a chance to get on one and he refuses and then Rose has like another chance and she like but it's all so good like the way that they're playing on the reasons like you know, I'm totally bought into every single time it happens where she
yeah,
doesn't get on the boat. I believe it, you know? And like to put her in front of the escape from this horrific thing that's about to happen and to have her turn it down is just so good, you know? Like have her turn it down and turn it down in a way that I say, "Yep, I totally get why she did that." And like I'm bought into this. It's just like incredible movie making. I can't even put it into words.
absolutely just fantastic and it just helps that they have these fantastic actors selling this because with lesser actors this movie could have been a very tough sell because if you don't have two people that can really sell that romance you're dead in the water.
Well, yeah, right, totally.
And
It's a
having
very
Leo
fine line between it being like hokey and amazing.
yeah and having Leo and Kate Winslet just like two powerhouse actors and like very young in their careers too. Like it's easy to look back now and be like, oh yeah, of course, like Kate Winslet, one of the greatest actresses of all time. But when she made that movie, she had maybe like one or two credits to her name at that point that were like
Yeah.
known. So she wasn't a household name at that point. Like this movie made her and Leo. Like at least Leo had before this What's Eating Gilbert Grape, which he was nominated for. So he at least had a little bit of a presence of this is a actor who's going places. Like she came out of nowhere, and the two of them just put in absolute world class performances to really help sell this movie.
Yeah,
And
for
it's a
Leo, I think
testament
it's
to
fair
them.
I think it's fair to say that he was still kind of like a teenage heartthrob kind of guy at this point. Like
Yeah, no,
he
he
hadn't really
absolutely was.
transitioned into like real consistent great actor. He seemed more like a teenage like heartthrob kind of guy to me. But then again, I was just a little kid. Maybe that's just the lens I look through things.
The true star of this movie, in my eyes, is Billy fucking Zane.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's
He
like
sells this movie so well as Cal. Like he is just so easy to hate and smug. He's just fantastic. And he takes lines that otherwise would just be regular dialogue and he makes it his own in a way that I still quote a lot of that dialogue today or like all the time. There would be no reason whatsoever. And I will just look at Heather and be like, you can be blase about many things, Rose, but not about Titanic.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, he's amazing in it. Yeah, and like just the way like he's like a total fanboy for the boat in the beginning, like you were just saying. Like he's like so dead set that it's unsinkable, and he really. I mean, he's a trope too, right? Like that character, but again, it's just so well executed and so well played by Billy Zane that like I don't care that it's a trope. It fits so perfectly.
But like tropes are there for a reason. Like when they're done well and they work, they work. Like
Yeah, I
you
mean,
shouldn't avoid them.
if this movie is about a lady learning to like give up some more materialistic stuff to like find herself and be happy, of course the villain is like a steel tycoon born into money, like asshole who only cares about material things, you know? Like and
Yeah.
so like yeah, that's like a trope, but it fits perfectly in this story and the guy playing it, Billy Zane, does it so perfectly.
He just has that like smugness down perfect. Like when they're going to get on the boats and Rose is like, don't you get it, mother? Half of the people on this boat are going to die tonight. And Cal's just
Yeah.
like, not the better half.
Yeah, he's like at least the right half will survive, like
like
something
he
like
like he just
that.
people are dying and he can't help but still be smug. Like it's like,
Yeah.
bro, this shit is serious.
Yeah, and he I think is like the perfect representative in that last scene of somebody who goes from like not caring about the boat sinking and thinking like it's fine to like as it goes on he realize like seeing him realize exactly how dire it is and like um how how it's actually dangerous for him is it was so cool, you know?
I
Because
like
I mean,
especially
like
like
right after it hits the iceberg, they're like, "There's an emergency," and he's like, "You're damn right. There's an emergency. Somebody stole my necklace." Like, it's like so he goes from like being that self-centered to like to understanding that like, oh wow, there actually is an emergency and it's affecting my life right now.
he's like, I gotta take this shit seriously. But I love how even in that moment where he's like, I have to take this shit seriously and get to safety, he still finds a way to be an
Yeah,
absolute horrible. Like he takes the girl,
right,
and it's like, all
right.
right, like he's gonna use her, but she's still gonna get out free. Like they're gonna be okay. He's like, I got a daughter, and then he gets on the boat, and then the second the boat is in danger of being overturned, he just tosses the girl aside and just starts slapping people away with the oars. He's like, get out of
Yeah,
here, you're gonna
yeah,
sink us.
yeah. So crazy. Yeah,
Like
he's
he
a
just
real
manages
scumbag.
to find ways to just continue to be a horrific person, and he's just so fantastic in that movie. And every line he makes, he just makes it like of all the lines in the movie that I always continue to that have such great quotable dialogue, 9 out of 10 of them are from him.
Yeah.
Like my favorite moment in the movie is such a moment that's not even that big, but just the way he delivers the line cracks me up in a way that I just continue to always remember it and quote it. and it's when like he's running is when he's like finally realizes that he's lost Rose. Like nothing, no way of
Right.
manipulation is going to get her. So he just takes Lovejoy's gun and is just like, I'll just fucking kill them. Like, and he's
Yeah.
chasing after them and they're running away. And he gets down into the water and now he realizes he's in the water and he's like, oh shit. And he just has that really childish voice where he's like, I hope you'll all be very happy together. And
Yeah.
then he starts giggling. And Lovejoy's like, what could possibly be funny right now? And he's just like,
Right, right.
I put the diamond in the coat.
In the coat.
Put the coat on her. Like, and he's just like lose, like you could just feel just how ironic he realizes his life is in that moment. And I'm just like, dude, he just sells this movie in a way that nobody else is. And I love him for it.
Yeah, yeah. He's so it's like you said in the beginning, he's so hateable and like all of those lines add up to us hating him more and more and yeah, it's perfect.
He's just absolutely fantastic in the movie. But I mean, everybody is. There's nobody that's terrible in it. Like even all the way down to like your minor characters, like Kathy Bates and
Oh yeah.
Kathy
Kathy
Bates.
Bates' speech on the lifeboat at the end is so
Yeah.
good. She's
If
like,
you don't shut your pie hole,
yeah, yeah. Well, no, but she makes like such a good point.
like,
Like
those are your
she
men
like
out
really,
there.
yeah. She's like, I don't understand a one of you. So good, so good. And then yeah, the guy's like, if you don't quiet out, I'm gonna throw you off the boat. And then like it's like, oh man, the
She's
mob
just
mentality wins out.
yeah, like she's great. Even Rose's mother, I don't know who the actress is, but like she's great at just that like
Is it not Professor McGonagall? It kind of looks
no,
like
it's
her.
it's not it's not it's not Professor McGonagall. I know that.
Okay,
She's here in a few things,
okay.
but like she's
I
just
guess I'll
really
take your
great
word
as
for
that
it.
like that she's like the inverse of Rose. She's like, do you want us to be poor? Like if we don't marry this guy, we're screwed and we're gonna be poor. She's someone who's just like so attached to that materialistic. Like she's what Rose would be if she doesn't get out of this. Like if she doesn't get out of it before it's too late, she's going to be that woman who's latched onto it and can't escape it anymore. And she
Right,
just
and
sees how badly it's corroded her mother.
right, and it's just like her mother really does embody like the dark side of that coin, like that the bad part, the negative of that side of the coin, which is like, you know, you're only as stable as the closest man to you with money,
Yeah,
right? Like,
exactly. Yeah,
so like
exactly.
even though they are high society, like the husband dies and they're kind of like left in a lurch. So, it's like, well, do you really have it? In 1912 as a woman, like I don't know.
Yeah, and it's also is like interesting watching this and seeing their views on that and everything, knowing that like the Great Depression is literally right around the corner for them all
Right,
too.
right, right.
Like, so you see, it's like even more dire for them. We're like, oh, little do you know, Rose's mom, like it's gonna get so
Yeah,
much worse.
and they do tie that in with Billy Zane losing a
Yeah,
bunch of money and shooting himself.
yeah. It's like he eventually got his millions, but the stock market crash of '29 hit him hard, and he put a pistol in his mouth that year.
Yeah,
It's like,
she
damn.
says it. She says it like so nonchalantly
Yeah.
too.
Like she's just rattling off statistics. You're just like, oh
Right,
damn, all right.
right.
Like,
It's
Jesus.
like it's pretty messed up. But yeah, so I mean like I don't know. And then I guess we're still kind of technically in the what worked section. So like I'll say what worked is like the scene craft of it where like he's constantly raising the stakes like throughout that whole boat crash scene, like the sinking scene or sequence hour whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
He's constantly raising the stakes and he's constantly doing it in such a way that like pays off like multiple times. Like the people getting locked down in the steerage section and like the guards at the doors there, like that's like a thing that's building tension throughout and like constantly the stakes are getting raised and more people are showing up and people are getting angrier and angrier, and then Leo and Kate get to those same doors. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, oh no, they got to that spot. That spot's been a thing for a while now. Um, or like when they like finally break Leo out, right? They like she goes down and he's handcuffed to the thing, and she has to like look for the key and she can't find the key, so she grabs the axe and she practices with the axe and she's not very good at it. And they're like, all right, we just gotta go. Like all of that stuff, like constantly building. And then they finally break him out, and she does the great axe swing. And then in the hallway, there's just like a little like 6-year-old kid like crying, like, and they're like, "Oh, we can't just leave the 6-year-old kid. Like this is a whole nother wrinkle." Like it just like just classic filmmaking where
Yeah.
like Charlie Chaplin style filmmaking where it's like almost a comedy of errors, but in a movie like this, it's really pushing them further and further.
It just continues to build on that tension. It's like the building blocks of tension where it's like, all right, here's an obstacle. All right, we got around that obstacle. Oh, but then here's another building block. Oh, we got to get around that
Right.
obstacle. Oh, and here's
And
another one. Like it
the
just,
way we got around that obstacle caused this other
yeah,
obstacle. You know what I
creates
mean?
another
Like,
one. Yeah. So it just like
right.
compounds on itself.
Yeah, so you're always interested and things are always building on each other and always getting more tense and harder.
Yeah.
Just to do that for like an hour and a half straight is
Yeah.
is incredible. I don't know that there's a lot of people, a lot of filmmakers, writers, directors that can do that.
Can build on that. Yeah. And continue to find new and interesting ways to build on it. One of the things that always gets me in movies like this is for whatever reason, watching movies about class struggles always just like finds a way to really unnerve me because it's just so like harrowing at times to just watch how desperate like the lower class citizens have to be. Like we said, like the poorer ones find out that they're locked down there. Like this ship is
Right.
sinking and
Right.
they're locked down there until the rich people can get on their boats first. Like them will think about letting you go. And it's
Right.
just
And
like,
but this is like the craziest part, and this is something they did a really good job of setting up and paying off in the movie. Is like you said, they have to wait down there until there's enough, like until there's room for them and like everybody else is gone, the first class passengers, but there's not enough boats.
yeah,
So like literally they're just waiting down there to die.
God.
and there's
Yeah, it's
and
and
there's not enough boats because they wanted the deck to look nicer. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
it's
Just like the way that that all plays into the theme is just it's masterful filmmaking.
it's
Just
insane. And he just finds ways to build to visualize it perfectly. Like the parts when like you finally realize that it's like, oh, they're not getting out of there. And you see like the Irish lady with her kids like reading them the story while the water's just rushing under the bed, and you're just like,
yeah.
dude, like this is killing me. Like this
I
is
think I think
horrific.
my favorite moment of realizing they're not getting out of there is it's like I think it was pretty early on in the boat sinking, but it's like early on, but like right around when everybody's starting to realize that it's a big deal. Somebody shoots off one of the flares, and I think it's the second flare that goes off, and he goes to this like really wide shot of the whole boat and like a lot of ocean surrounding it, and the flare goes up and explodes and it looks so small, and you're just like, it's like this image where you realize in that exact moment, like, oh yeah, they're just in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean right now. Like
Yeah.
nobody's coming forever.
Like the
like
no
even if you get onto those lifeboats, you're just rowing out into the void, you know what I mean?
and you're just sitting
um
around waiting to die.
yeah, so like that shot even is like exactly what you're saying. Like you feel so in the moment and everything's like jarring and in your face and like feels so big, and then he cuts out and you realize, oh man, like they're just in the middle of nowhere and everything is so small, you know?
Yeah, it's crazy. And for back then too, because it's just like there's no satellite or anything. Like they're not going to be
No,
able to
no.
track where you were or anything. Like
Right.
you just got to hope that there was a ship in the area that heard your distress call and your last known location. Like
Right. You just have to hope that you can not freeze to death before the next boat shows up, you know?
which is just yeah, it's absolutely insane. He was so just well masterfully done at just building that last hour and a half into just pure chaos and bedlam and pay off all those themes that we were set up earlier in the movie. Like it is one of those movies where like you don't say perfect often, but that's one of those movies that just feels like as perfect as a movie as could be. Like
Yeah,
there's
I think it's
nothing,
as close to perfect as you can
yeah,
get.
as
Yeah.
close to perfect as you can possibly get with a movie. Because like I know we like to switch it up between what we like and what we don't like, but spoiler alert, I have nothing that I don't like in this movie. Like I love everything about this movie. I've got
Yeah.
no, and anything that I could possibly have come up with just for us to have something would just be like Ebert. It would just be nitpicking.
Yeah, I mean, there was some parts where I was kind of like scratching my head or like I thought were funny, but none of that like mattered to like the actual quality of the movie for me.
Exactly. Yeah. Like nothing would be like me trying to come up with something that didn't work would just be me forcing myself to try and put something there because we want to like do something there. But it's just
I
I
think
can't.
I
This
think my
movie is
favorite,
amazing to me.
if I could go with a head scratcher part, my favorite head scratcher is like the premise that she's telling them the story of her time on the Titanic, and in the first like couple of sentences of that, she's like, "And then I was gonna jump off the boat." And, like, you know
How
what I
quickly
mean?
she just goes
It
into
just
like, I was ready
yeah,
to kill myself.
yeah.
Like,
It felt like maybe the kind of thing you dress up a little nicer if you were telling that story to other people. I don't know. Like,
oh man, she was giving it to him warts and all.
yeah, right. I guess if you hit 102, you just don't give a shit
Yeah,
anymore.
right. Like at that point, she's like, "What else can they do to me?" She's like, "You're getting it all, man. You want the story."
Right.
Well, I guess the funnier one would be like it goes into because if she's telling this story, it is. I mean, obviously, it's just movie magic. Like once we go into the past, we're in the past, and it doesn't matter, and you don't think about it. But really, every scene should take place from her point of view. Like it is funny that you then see Leo and Fabrizio like in the bar, like winning the Titanic
Right.
tickets. Because it's
Yeah.
just like, how the fuck would she know about that? Like,
Yeah, and I mean, like, I think that's another thing that's probably a testament to James Cameron, just like realizing that it doesn't matter. You
yeah,
know
yeah,
what I mean?
exactly. Like it's one of those things where it's like, it doesn't once she starts telling the story and we're in the past, it doesn't matter anymore. Like we're in the past at this point. Like we could play a little fun and loose with the rules.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, but again, like those are just nitpicks. Like it's
Yeah.
not
Right. And
anything.
there was nothing I didn't like about this movie.
Yeah, there
Nothing
was
at all.
nothing that I could sit there and be like, this actively hurt this movie. Like it's just not possible. This is as good as it gets when you want to talk about great movies and why we love going to the cinema. This is as good as it gets. Do we got so I guess do we got anything else to add or do we head into is
I
it
think
time now
we,
for our star ratings?
I think we give our star ratings. Yeah.
Into our star ratings. All
Just to
right.
be clear, we're doing out of 10, and half stars are allowed.
Half stars are allowed. Yep, we're gonna do. Jim is gonna give his rating out of 5. I give my rating out of 5. We will add those ratings together for a rating out of 10 and put it on the board with last week's movie, The Lost World, which sits right now in first place at 7.5. Will it be able to make it again after this week?
I have a strong feeling that it will be in second place following this.
There we go. All right, Jim, let's hear it. Final thoughts and a star rating for Titanic.
Yeah, I mean, final thoughts. Just going back to the beginning, I think it's James Cameron's best movie, and that's really saying something. So I'm gonna give it 5 out of 5.
And perfect sentiments. I wholeheartedly agree with that as well. This is definitely his magnum opus. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. It's just, it is as perfect a movie as you could hope for when you go to the cinema. I also give it 5 stars. So that
Wow.
get, yeah,
So we only made it to week 2 before we gave something a perfect
per,
10.
a perfect 10. Well, I mean, when the second movie is Titanic, like, I mean,
Yeah, no, it's funny because I think generally when we've talked to people about these kind of ratings, I get a lot of crap for like not rating things too highly. And it's like this would be the movie where I would say, well, yeah, this is why nothing gets like a 4.5 or a 5 because I need to save that for Titanic. You know
yeah,
what I
like it
mean?
needs to
Like,
be saved for these big, huge event pictures that
right.
are
If
larger than
you're
life. So
if you're too willy nilly with those high grades, the next thing you know, Spawn and Titanic are only a half a star away. You know, so
that is true. That is true. And yeah, but also I feel like now at this point, like I doubt we'll get anywhere close to a Titanic for a while now. I would imagine like that's you don't
yeah,
normally get movies like that. Like there's not many movies that I would give a Titanic rating to. So I
right.
think
Yeah,
it's like
I
easy.
agree. I
It's
agree.
easy for us to give it to it right now because it's like nothing I think is going to touch it for a little while. Like we probably
Yeah,
have a bit in
well,
the tank.
we shall see. We shall see
But
what's up
yeah, we shall
next.
see because we do have some heavy hitters in the tank. But all right, so Titanic now takes the Lost World spot. Lost World dropping down to second place now at 7.5. Titanic holding strong here now in our first spot with a perfect 10 out of 10. Will anything be able to touch it or beat it? That will remain to be seen as we go week to week in these great movies. I don't know. Honestly, I don't even think we can set up next week's movie because off the top of my head, I don't even remember what it would be. I think I
Okay, well,
remember what it would be, but I don't
I
know for sure
suppose
if this one would be 3 or 4, but we're not
that's a
going to spoil it anyway. I think I know.
total mystery.
It's a total mystery right now for anybody, but I guess we can leave it to everyone to see if they can figure out what it is. It will be an animated movie. I know for sure that it is animated.
Oh, there's a good
Yes.
chance I might have actually seen this one then.
Yes, I think we're finally going to get to one that Jim has finally seen in theaters. It is an animated movie. We are now putting 1997 in the back window and we're moving now into 1998. So we're going to get. So there you go. Those are the two hints. It was from 1998 and it's an animated movie.
Yeah.
Those are our
Those are the
two
two
hints.
hints. It wasn't from 1997 and it was from 1998.
There we go. It's perfect. Perfect. I think it's a perfect amount of clues for them to figure it out for a good
Yeah.
1998 animated vehicle. It is a classic. There will be plenty of hype for us to talk about it with those movies. But that'll be it for all of us here in this podcast this week. Be sure to check and tune in with us next time when we dive into the absolute 1998 classic. But until next time, we will see you at the movies.